Hey again, everyone. It's Tyler Cavalli with KRVN Radio. Well, we're here at a Memorial Stadium. Husker football season is just right around the corner. We're getting excited for it. Practices are officially underway. And we have a new voice for Nebraska football. That is Kyle Crooks, who is joining us. And Kyle, first off, welcome to Nebraska. You've been here for a month or so. How have things been going so far?
Yeah, it's just been learning a brand new area, right? So I'm coming from Gainesville, and I worked for the Florida Gators for 8 years. So now it's been learning a brand new team, learning the history, and boy, there's a lot of it in this logo. Obviously there's a lot of homework that's been done and a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, but also, I am a person too that moved all the way across the country. So you had your movers bring all your stuff to your new apartment and figuring out the lay of the land here in Lincoln, but it's been great. The people here are great.
Have you ventured around Nebraska so far? I mean, have you really kind of got an idea, or have you even been to Nebraska before, obviously taking the job?
No, so this is the first time that I've been in Nebraska, and really the only two cities that I've been. And I'll venture out to certain areas once I'm speaking engagements, or just go out to see other areas where there's season ticket holders and get to interact with the fan base. But I've been to Omaha recently and Lincoln, so it's eventually as I get settled in this job in the months to come, especially during football season, I'll be out in, I'm sure, central Nebraska, western Nebraska, and see some of the other great towns.
Let's talk about your background a little bit. You mentioned you came from Gainesville, obviously got to see and follow Florida around a little bit as well, but you've had many stops throughout your career before coming here to Nebraska. Talk about your background in radio before coming here.
Yeah, it's long. I don't know how much time you got, but that's sort of what happens when you eventually get to a spot like this. There's a long history that goes along with it. So born and raised in New Jersey. I know Matt Rule's a New York guy, so we sort of have that link of being in the Northeast. And for me, I went to a small Division III school, William Patterson University. It allowed me to be the sports director of the campus radio station, do football, basketball, baseball, softball, and from there, once I graduated, it's about, okay, what's that next step? So I was doing some high school, Division III, Division II on a freelance basis, working a side job. I've done small Division I at Fairleigh Dickinson, USC Upstate, some of those smaller schools, just to build up that resume and build up that experience. And then I would say probably the first big break for me was 2015. I worked in AA baseball, and for those that haven't experienced minor league baseball, boy, it is something. It's every single day, 140 games. We had a 20-game homestand to start it, and it was rigorous. Like, homestands are harder too because there's so much more as a broadcaster that you're doing and media relations. So then I went back home to New Jersey. I was doing high school football and basketball and small college. And then that first college break came with the Florida Gators. So there I was a broadcast coordinator for 8 years. I was on the football broadcast and men's basketball, women's basketball full-time, softball full-time. I did some gymnastics there. I did everything that we broadcast at Florida. I had a hand in, along with a lot of the behind-the-scenes content, and I was looking for that next step. This is a dream opportunity in a lot of different ways because of the interest and all that, but I wanted to be the voice of a big-time football school, and that's what Nebraska has created. And this opportunity is truly a dream come true.
Yeah, let's talk about obviously getting the Nebraska job and everything that goes along with it. We'll talk about obviously the Greg Sharp aspect of it too. But you mentioned wanting that big-time gig. You have it here with Nebraska now. But what about Nebraska being the voice of the Huskers was appealing for you?
I think that it just means so much to a lot of people. A lot of people say, well, Nebraska, you didn't have any connections to the school. Why is this your dream job? And it's more of things that it knocks off on that personal mental checklist, right? It's a school that it matters, no matter the record, no matter what kind of season they're having. With 400 plus consecutive sellouts, and I was in the indoor practice facility. You see the signage of the consecutive sellouts in there, and everything revolves around Nebraska athletics. This state rallies, and surrounding states rally around this brand. And then I see the infrastructure and the investment that they put around broadcasting here, and Troy Dannon, the leadership of what he's done with the entire athletic department, the coaches here, and Coach Rule is such an inspirational guy if you ever get a chance to talk with him. So all the aspects around the athletics here, it matters financially in a revenue sharing world that we're in now in college athletics. Nebraska is in such a good spot moving forward. But radio matters here. It's always going to matter here. And you can't say that for everywhere because of the digital streaming age and how we engage with new media now. Here at Nebraska, the radio product matters, and if you don't bring it every single game, people will let you know. So that's what I love about this place. It's tradition-rich, and it loves its radio.
And we're talking to Kyle Crooks, who is the new voice of Nebraska football, as we're joining him here at Memorial Stadium, getting ready for kickoff of a brand new season with the Huskers. All right, so we were talking about, obviously, you're going to replace a legendary voice in Greg Sharp that people come to know and love hearing every Saturday. And, there's been, you really think about it, some really big voices that have been a mainstay with Nebraska fans. The Kent Pavelkas as well, right? He's now doing basketball. But when that comes to your mind, obviously, you never want to, you want to have your own voice, right? That's what I always talk about in radio. But how do you replace Greg, but also still have that chapter still there?
Yeah, it's, and the word replace is one that I just try to stay away from. This is, and I said it in some of the interviews when I was introduced to this position, is that Greg Sharp is always going to be the voice of the Huskers. The name is, if you walk up into that press area and you look outside of the radio booth and you see the signage above the Greg Sharp radio booth, it's that for a reason, because he was so incredibly loved externally from the fan base. That goes without saying, but internally, everybody here loved him. All the people that I'm going to get to work with, they can't say enough positive things about Greg Sharp. So there's an inherent pressure of what you're stepping into, right? You want to take the torch, run with it, and continue to build on the standard. And then some of the voices previous to that, Kent Pavelka, who's still doing basketball here and has seen some of the great times, specifically with Nebraska football in the 90s. And you go all the way back to Lyle Bremser, who was, he's a god around these parts when you talk to anybody when it comes to Nebraska broadcasting. So of course, that first broadcast is going to be a unique one, I think, when we're in Kansas City taking on Cincinnati. I think early on it's going to be a lot of the remembrance of what Greg had meant to so many people. I'm sure we'll get a chance to place highlights and talk to, as a broadcast team, talk about what Greg had meant to everybody. I wasn't here, so hearing the thoughts of Ben McLaughlin and Damon Benning and Jessica Cootie and Matt Coatney and what Greg had meant. So I think it's going to be a unique broadcast in a lot of different ways in that first one, where it's just going to be sort of a somber temperament to it all, because Greg would have entered his 18th season. And I did want to mention this too. I met Amy, Greg's wife, who welcomed me with a box of goodies, sort of like Lincoln local things like Valentino's pizza sauce and all these different things. And Amy said, we're rooting for you. We're going to be listening to you, and whatever you need, we're here for you. And it made me emotional at the time. Yeah. She doesn't have to do that, and that meeting meant everything to me.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. That gives me goosebumps, Stephen. Think about that. I can only imagine for you. Yeah, it will be interesting starting that next chapter, right? You mentioned it's going to be a away game. It'll feel like a home game. You'll know that, I'm sure, that's 5 minutes into kickoff. But with it being at Arrowhead Stadium and an NFL stadium, and then you'll finally get it here at Memorial Stadium. Are you excited about, for you, obviously now being the voice, but at Memorial Stadium and now getting to look at as for your job for Saturdays? Now, what's that like for you in terms of leading up to that moment?
Yeah, I think I'll be a ball of energy for that first game in Kansas City, and it should be, I'm sure, 60 plus, maybe 50, 60 plus thousand Husker fans in the building for that game. So that'll have its unique emotion around it for sure for me. And then the next week, it'll be exciting to see the tunnel walk in person for the first time. There's so many unique traditions when you think of Nebraska and you think of all the players and the great moments, but also some of the things that marketing has put together throughout the years, and starting with the tunnel walk, and obviously between the third and the fourth quarter, the drone show of a night game. That first game will be a night game against Akron. So I think I'll take a moment as I'm narrating through that tunnel walk. It's something that we air live on the radio. I know Greg Sharp did such a great job painting the picture, not just of the game, but sort of the different aspects around a game day in Lincoln. And then I think what I'm fired up about is, I saw in the SEC what the tailgate experiences are like in Gainesville. I just hearing from people, they're like, just wait for what downtown Lincoln's going to look like for these home games. And that sea of red is not just in the stadium, but in the streets of the Haymarket and just outside Memorial Stadium. And the bars are going to be fired up and ready to go. So I'm going to soak in every aspect of that game day experience.
So we'll need to catch up with you a year from now. You'll have obviously a full year underneath your belt, but then you'll finally kind of get the understanding of, as you mentioned, everything that goes around. It kind of stinks because you don't get obviously take part in some of that because obviously you're working, but maybe afterwards as well. But you'll finally get immersed into that. You've been in Nebraska for a little bit. You mentioned the goodie box that you had. Had to ask, have you tried Valentino's pizza? Have you tried the Runza, the chili cinnamon roll? Have you done any of that true Nebraska native things?
So the first meal I had was at Runza, but it wasn't the Runza. So I took some grief on Sports Nightly for that.
Where did you get this Runza at, by the way?
So I got a chicken sandwich at this Runza, which is like sacrilege here. So I've learned from my mistakes, and so you learn quickly. So I haven't had the Runza, but I've been inside a Runza, if that counts. I haven't had Valentino's pizza yet. I've been to some local spots. I've been to Lead Bellies here in the Haymarket, Buzzer Billy's, which I know is popping during a game day. So some of the different restaurants, but there's like Fairbury Hot Dog. Like I can't wait to try one of those on a game day. So more and more, I'll start to peel back the onion a little bit more in some of these traditions.
That's good to hear. Well, at least you'll have to try a Runza before kickoff at some point.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so as we wrap things up here, for all of our listeners on KRVN that have been listening with us for such a long time to Nebraska football, what else do they know about you, Kyle, and what, coming this upcoming fall in Nebraska football?
Yeah, I'm just really excited to get going. I have these 11 by 17 tabloid sheets of research and prep. We call them spotting boards in the play-by-play world. And I was out at practice earlier today looking at my spotting board saying I need to rearrange this, rearrange that. And I just hope it comes across on the radio, my passion for the craft. And I understand that it's going to be a rough transition. It's a rough transition here, right? Greg was beloved and for good reason. And I understand for your listenership and for all the great affiliates on the Huskers radio network that it's gonna take some time to hear a new voice and be accepting of a new voice. So I'll say this, when I got announced, it was so overwhelming in terms of the positivity when we live in a social media age where things can be very negative and it could kind of snowball and roll downhill. The acceptance of a Husker fan base that they don't owe me anything, was pretty eye-opening. I'll say this, too, is that I think this is a really exciting team. Dylan Raiola, you don't see too many true freshman quarterbacks who get a chance to play an entire season, so he's coming in with a lot of experience. I think from a skill position standpoint, it's the best it's been here in quite some time. And Coach Rule, we know that year 3 trend, right, of how the win total seems to pop up in double digits. And schedule is what it is. Defensively, I think it's going to surprise a lot of people up front. I see how big they are in practice earlier today, especially that offensive line. There's a lot of deep units for this Nebraska football team. And, boy, August 28th can't get here fast enough.
Kyle, what are the expectations, do you think, talking with Coach Rule? Obviously, a Big Ten football media days, a couple of practices now. You mentioned Raiola and the defensive unit now. But going forward into this year, they took a leap, a step forward last season. What does it look like this season, do you think?
Yeah, I think Coach Rule, one of the first things he said on the podium at media days was, we're going to be good. I think we have a really good football team. And when you write all these names down on paper, and I talked about the wide receivers, Dane Key's a guy who was a really, really productive wide receiver in the SEC, and Isaiah Hunter was the most productive pass catcher at Cal. Ja'Cory Barney's coming off one of the best true freshman seasons for a Nebraska wide receiver in its history at nearly 60 catches. And I think Emmett Johnson's a dog at that running back room, which I think there's going to be a lot of competition in the running back room. A guy like Mekhi Nelson, I think we're going to hear a lot more from. And offensive line is as deep as it's been in quite some time. I think there's about 10 guys that have an opportunity to play some legitimate snaps. And Coach Rule had used the phrase hell on wheels for the defensive line, because that was one of the biggest question marks when you lose Nash Hutmaker and Ty Robinson, two of your big producers up front. There's a lot of young and/or veteran but inexperienced guys that are stepping in some bigger roles here on the defensive line, and secondary is incredibly deep. I think you have more dangerous aspects on special teams in terms of returners. You have, Dana Holgerson, full season now as offensive coordinator, a new DC, a new special teams coordinator, which I think will make a huge difference with Mike Eckler. And then Coach Rule. You'd never bet against that guy. He is a heck of a coach. He is an incredible CEO of a program. I just think everything is set up for this Nebraska team to take a giant leap after they already took a nice jump in year 2 for Coach Rule.
Well, I know our Husker fans are excited for it and excited to hear you take us on that journey this upcoming fall, and hopefully it's one that goes into the winter as well. And once again, welcome to Nebraska.
Thanks so much for having me.
Again, that is Kyle Crooks, who is the new voice of Nebraska football, joining us here for KRVN, again from Memorial Stadium. Listen to him all season long on the Rural Voice of Nebraska. I'm Tyler Cavalli for KRVN.